So recently I went on the overlap to discuss why I thought West Ham were the worst run club in the Premier League. And in that segment, I mentioned that I'd given up my season ticket after many years. And I got a lot of questions about that. A lot of people wanted to know why. Like, after all those years, why would you give up your season ticket now? What was the reason? And there's not one reason why I give up my season ticket after all these years. In fact, I've nailed it down to five reasons why I gave up my season ticket this year. The first one has to come down to the football, right? The immediate one. There's bigger issues, but it's been so hard to watch the past couple of years. It really has. And I started to really think it was football in general. The game has changed so much over the years, and there's so many teams now in the Premier League where the first objective of the game is to not lose rather than try to win. I remember watching football even far back as 10 years ago, even back when I first got season ticket. I had a season ticket just over, I think, 10 years. And you'd see games and they were end to end, teams going for goal. That was the objective. Now it's going for control, trying to keep hold of possession, sideways, backwards passing. I initially was in my own West Ham bubble and thought that it was just a West Ham issue and maybe a couple of other teams, but it's a football-wide issue. I see the Manchester derby last season with obviously Man City, Man United, and it was one of the most dull games ever, and both teams were happy to come away with a draw. That's not football. That's not the game we all fell in love with. And going to see that live, it's not fun. It doesn't lend itself to a good atmosphere. It doesn't suck you into the game. You're just standing there with not the best view of the whole pitch. You know, like me, I was quite close. Other areas of the pitch are obstructed, and you just not got much to shout about and to celebrate. So that is definitely one of the big reasons. Secondly, I didn't want to give David Sullivan any more of my money. The way this club has been run over the years has been nothing short of a disgrace and a shambles. And I don't know what else we can do to show our displeasure, to try to force some element of change. And me, as an individual fan, I'm just one person. All I could do is think to vote with my wallet, you know, and not renew. And I think when I started to get wind of how many fans were not renewing, you know, I thought that there could be a message there. They realise record numbers of fans not renewing. What's going on? What are we doing wrong? Maybe this club isn't as viable anymore to own. Maybe it's time to cut our losses. I don't know. Personally, he'll go when he's ready to go. But it kind of hurts my soul in a way to give him my money. Because at the end of the day, I'm a West Ham supporter. I want to support my club. I've supported my club with thousands and thousands of pounds in my lifetime. But it's really hard to know that one of the people that are benefiting off of that support is David Sullivan. And he's not going to be the owner forever. And for right now, I just don't want to give him any of my money. Simple as whatever I can do. If I can avoid it, I won't. So that was a driving factor for me. And it's something that I'd thought about for a while. And it really kills me to think that we've got to this point. You know, me personally, just over 10 years ago, I finally got the money. I finally earned enough money in my life to be able to not just buy myself a season ticket at Upton Park, but buy my mum a season ticket at Upton Park. And it was a great feeling and it was a great experience. And goes into my next issue. This season, you know, money was definitely a factor. You know, if the money had been there readily, I may have caved in. It was a very, very hard decision. Despite everything I'm saying in this video, I did not take this decision lightly. It was very, very hard to not renew. And I had that spare bit of money lying around, I may have just bit the bullet. I don't know. But it was definitely a driving factor. Without getting into too much stuff, I'm not the sort of person that comes and bears out all my personal stuff. I find it hard to talk about that sort of thing. But, you know, it's been a very hard year, like in terms of, you know, finances, because my industry, you know, my livelihood, where I made my living for the past 12 to 13 years, is on its arse. It's died. I don't know why, but the work just ain't there anymore. It's very few and far between, very scarce, which has been massively stressful and probably contributed to my lack of enjoyment of football over the past year. And, you know, having that pressure, I could have got the money together. I could have paid for my season ticket, but I wasn't willing to leave myself in a difficult situation over football. It just didn't seem worth it to add that level of stress to go to and watch games that I haven't enjoyed for the past 2 years. And, you know, that sort of helped force my hand in a way. And, you know, in the end, I'm kind of glad it did. And it goes into my next reason. And one of the main reasons is the stadium. You've heard me talk about, I talked about on the overlap, I called it a soulless athletics bowl. And that's what it is. You know, I've been contemplating with the idea of not renewing probably like for the past 2 seasons. I've never really enjoyed going there. You know, when I first walked into that stadium, I was kind of mesmerized and amazed by just the size and scope of it. You know, to go in there and go, wow, this is West Ham, you know, we've got a big stadium. Like, and I was sort of blown away first walking in there. And then over time, actually going and attending matches as a fan, you just realized what we'd gained and what we'd lost. And what we'd lost was just a beautiful historic ground that it hurts. Honestly, the further we get away from Upton Park over years, the longer it gets, the harder it gets, I think, and to think about what we've lost there. You know, that match day experience, the great pubs, the people, the tightness in the stadium, the atmosphere, you know, the burger vans, the pie mashup, all of that stuff, the grittiness, the walk to the stadium. We threw it all away for soulless corporate crap that is the London Stadium. Stratford, I spent a lot of time around Stratford as a kid. It's a different place altogether now. You got Westfields, all these companies that just don't feel West Ham. There's nothing West Ham about it. You go to Upton Park, claret and blue seating everywhere, West Ham everywhere, inside and out. We give that up for what feels like a neutral ground, and that's what it felt like to me. Neutral. The white seats, you get some specks of claret here and there, but full white seats. The temporary like West Ham signs that put up that are taken down for concerts and things like that. The crappy scaffolding seating that my season ticket was on. I was on the scaffold seating. Poor Scott's seat was on the little seam there that they put the crappy little tape over and that, and gives you a bad back to stand on. Everything that in that stadium makes you feel like this isn't ours. This isn't home. This is, you know, a rental, which is what it is. And I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I missed so many kickoffs where I just had to drag myself out of my house to go to the stadium. It was just that point, the clock's ticking. Oh God, I've got to go there again. That's how it felt. And, you know, when it was Upton Park, I mean, it was closer to me. It's a couple of stops on the train, but I would get off early. I'd get off at East Ham, and just soak it in, stop in Denmark, you know, stop in Central M&M bar with the family. And yeah, I missed that. And I just didn't like the walk to the stadium, the process of getting in the stadium, the bag searches, the queue for the turnstiles. There was none of that at Upton Park. It took hardly any time at all. And they had a person at the turnstiles who would pat you down and go in. None of this. I understand it's a bigger stadium, there's more people, but there was less entrances to go in. So everything about it just takes longer. And I can't stand it. I said I missed so many kickoffs. See, Everton have just opened their stadium, and it's a proper football stadium. No West Goodison, of course, but it's purpose built for football. It's theirs. It is their new home. They haven't got to tear their seats apart when there's going to be an athletics game or something like that. It's theirs. Spurs Stadium, it's theirs. And that was the big, big reason. And the last reason was all the other fans that are giving up their season tickets. A lot of my family, there was 18 of us that went to that meeting where we picked our seats with Ray Winston's video and all of that stuff. And there was around about 18 of us. Now I've given up my season ticket. There's probably about 4 left of that. Year by year, people dropped off because they didn't enjoy it anymore. So many fans I've spoke to that have been season ticket holders since the 70s and the 80s, loved going, you know, went with their dad and now go with their boy. Said, I can't do it anymore. It's just not for me. And I understand. And that means we're losing a lot of the traditional West Ham fans, the fans of Upton Park, the fans that would make the noise, would sing the songs, would create that sense of community, you know, for a lot of corporate fans or neutrals. And that's the other thing. So many Arsenals and Man Uniteds and all these other shirts and other fans you see in there, not even just when we're playing them. And it's just, every time you see it, it's just another slap in the face. And we're just going to see more and more of that now. More fans are choosing to leave. The atmosphere is going to get worse and worse and worse because those fans are gone. The fans that you rely on to make the noise. And there's going to be fewer and fewer left. And again, it's just feeling so much more corporate now. So, yeah, those are the reasons. And I could have got into a lot more detail. But, you know, we'll always have the memories of Upton Park and the hope that one day Sullivan will be out of this club and we'll have someone that can at least give us a stadium that we deserve, that we are proud to call home.